Dear parents, this Christmas, please do not buy your kids porn. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that every Christmas, many parents buy their children a smartphone or an iPad for Christmas. Your kids, if you have kids of that age, have probably been begging for one. Almost every kid wants a smartphone or wants an iPad, not because they want to call people or text people, but because they want access to the internet. Let me just give you a couple of reasons why this is a terrible idea. For the last 13 years, I've been speaking on the issue of pornography to young students right across Canada and the United States, and even at times in Europe. And what I have found is that over and over again, we see that kids are accessing pornography on their smartphones and getting addicted at increasingly young ages. In Christian schools, the average age of first exposure to pornography is going down every year. I've spoken to about 3,000 students this year alone, and the average age of first exposure to pornography is grade 6. The average age of first exposure to pornography in Canada is age 9. It used to be far higher for Christian communities, but increasingly that's going up. I've spoken in schools where it's common practice to get kids the first smartphone when they're heading into grade 9 or 10. And when I speak to the grade before they get their smartphone, I find that the problem with pornography is far less than the grade immediately afterwards. And the factor is always the same. The pornography companies recognize this, and they've actually redigitized all of their content to make sure it's easy to view on a phone and easy to look at. And one of the things I want everybody to keep in mind is that these devices, again, are not simply just phones. They are access to everything. They are access to the entirety of the internet. This would be the equivalent of, in 1985, if you had a house filled with unlocked closets and each of those closets were packed with pornography. That's the equivalent today of having a home filled with unlocked devices that do not have filters, that are not locked down. And you're just hoping that at no point is your child, in a moment of curiosity or temptation or even by accident, going to go onto a porn site or stumble across a porn site, or increasingly as kids send each other clips or send each other images, that they're not going to fall into temptation or fall into sin that way. When you give your kid a smartphone, you are relinquishing control of what they see. And even though some smartphones can be locked entirely down, very few parents know as much about this technology as their kids do. And I have gotten more calls than I can count in the last 2 years alone from parents who found that their kids, with all this time on their hands, managed to get around all the blocks and all of the filters and access porn anyways. I've also heard from many parents who even said that their kid got addicted to porn as young as 11, 12, or 13 years old because they found an old smartphone in a junk drawer or somewhere in the house that nobody was using, that they could take, connect to the internet, and then look at pornography that way. Kids will say they need a phone because they want to be able to keep in touch with their parents, because they want to be able to call their friends. And I don't have any opinion on kids getting a phone that's used to text or to call. My issue is with giving kids access to the internet, because over the last 13 years, I've seen the massive amount of damage that this has done to kids in our Christian communities. I've talked to kids who are 15 years old and got addicted to pornography at age 5. I've spoken to grade 11 classes where every single girl in grade 11 struggled with porn at some point in the last 6 months. I remember vividly one kid putting up his hand in the middle of a presentation and he said, if these smartphones are so dangerous, why do these parents keep on giving them to us? I think that's a great question, and I think it's a question we should all consider when we're deciding what to get our kids for Christmas this Advent season. One of my friends put it really well. One parent asked him, when do you give your child a smartphone? And his answer, I think, was perfect. He said, whenever you want their childhood to end.